Okay, I'd like to start the Audit Committee meeting for the month of July. I need a motion to accept the minutes as presented, please. Can I get a second? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Don't have any public speakers, I don't believe.
Nope.
Okay, first thing on the agenda is our consolidated financial statements for the period ending March 31st, 01.
David? Good afternoon.
Okay, anything unusual with our first quarter? You know, we've had,
The answer. Let me do my thing, and then I'll be glad to answer questions. As you know, we've completed our review of the financial statements for the MTA for the quarter ended March 31 of 2011. As you know, a review is not an audit. It consists of performing a number of procedures that are analytical in nature. It involves a number of discussions with management concerning any potential changes in the financial statements, but we didn't do an audit of the financial statements. However, because this is the first quarter that the financial statements are being produced with information that's produced at the BSC, while we didn't do an audit, and by the way, we aren't completed with our procedures there yet because we're still continuing to look at processes there and continuing to ask for information. We did go through a process of making sure that the data that transferred from the BSC was consistent with the information that appeared in the existing systems, and we did look at the control structure as they exist now, to identify any differences and to adjust our procedures appropriately for the changes in procedures. But we haven't completed our processes at the BSC, and we will continue to look at it as they continue to implement the system. But based upon those procedures, we have concluded that there are no material changes to the financial statements that we've noted in our review procedures. I'll answer any questions that you have.
any questions? I got to be honest, I've read through, I perused it, but the interesting part to me was the last part where you compare our financial plan with your report.
Right. Now, by the way, that's by agreement.
That's it.
If you remember, as part of a negotiation that you had with the State Controller's Office regarding budgetary practices, that goes back years ago, there was an agreement between you and them, and we acquiesced, I guess is the best way to say, that we would agree your budgetary reporting to your financial statements. And that's because it's not exactly, there are some differences between it and general accepted accounting principles that everybody acknowledges as appropriate for the MTA, and that's the reason for that. And that was a part of the agreement to allow you to be different.
I got to be honest with you, the reason I brought it up is not too many people are going to get to the last 2 pages of this.
Well, unfortunately, you're right. I mean, and most people will focus on either the consolidated entity-wide level reports, or they will focus on their favorite component. And getting to the back and through all of it is a bit of a chore.
So if there are no questions, can I get a motion to accept it as so we can get it printed? Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay. Next thing is the single audit.
We have completed our audit of the single audit for the year ended December 31, 2010. And based upon your approval, we'll issue our report on the single audit. I'm going to point you, as you're aware, it's included again with the financial statements for the MTA because it's a requirement that it does that. But in addition to that, there's a schedule of what's called federal financial assistance, and we are required to review it in relationship to the basic financial statements, and we have done that and concluded that it is consistently presented with the financial statements. In addition, we are required to report on the MTA's compliance with each of its major federal grant programs. And that means that we look at each grant that by definition meets the requirement of a major grant program. And I'm going to ask the question. Darshan, it's $3 million, right? Okay, $4.6 million. So anything in excess of $4.6 million is considered to be a major grant program. We actually audit that grant on a standalone basis. And we have concluded, based on our reports that appear on pages 110, and 111, that the MTA is in compliance with the major requirements, or for each of its major federal programs. We're also required to review the internal controls over compliance with federal financial assistance, and as a result of our review, we did note one item that we refer to as a significant deficiency. The MTA in all instances did not maintain, didn't basically maintain records to identify all assets that were acquired with federal financial assistance. We talked with management about that. They're aware of it, in the process of dealing with it. But other than that, we had no material question cost, and based upon your approval, we'll be able to issue our report on the federal grant.
Not clear on that. On the open recommendations, you would issue a separate management letter in case of this audit?
The answer is we do issue a management letter at the end of our audits for the MTA, and we do, as a matter of course, we have an agreement with the MTA and with you. It basically says we track management's implementation of those recommendations. Each year, management will respond to prior year open recommendations, give their status of that. We will also review management's comments and basically, either concur or not concur with their statement about the process.
Have you issued, as Mr. Boyd, a management letter for 2010?
Yes.
Last meeting. Came to last meeting.
All right. It was the last meeting, but we can get you a copy.
Okay. Any questions regarding the single audit? If not, I need a motion to approve. Second? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, you're on.
Okay. As you know, each year we come before you to discuss the MTA's compliance with the Internal Control Act, which is covered under Public Authorities Law Section 2930 through 2932. The Internal Control Act lays out certain responsibilities of the MTA Board as it relates to internal controls, including establishing guidelines, ensuring that we have an internal control program, which includes internal control review, that we make sure that MTA policies and procedures are relatively available to our employees. It also requires that the board appoint an internal control officer, that we implement an education and training program, and that obviously we establish an internal audit function, and that internal audit function is independent and evaluates internal controls and operations to identify weaknesses. What you have before you is our internal control summary, which goes through the first 5 points that I just made, and we find that the MTA is fully compliant with the requirements of the Internal Control Act. If you have any questions regarding the report, I'm more than happy to answer those.
Well, I perused it. I got to be honest with you, as I went through and I ran across the portion that said a list of all high-risk activities.
Yes, there are about 575 activities listed or business processes listed as being
Is there anything
high
that's
risk.
not high risk?
There are about 6,000 business processes within the vulnerability assessments each year. Of those approximately 6,000, only 575 were considered high risk. Again, high risk means that when the department looked at those particular business processes and the risks associated with them, they looked at both the potential impact and the probability of something going wrong, and that's how a risk rating is established. So it's not so it doesn't mean there's something wrong. It just means that these are business processes that are critical.
It's a massive job.
Yes, there are approximately, over 200 people within the MTA that have some involvement in the internal control process, from myself and the internal control officers who are here today to their coordinators within their departments. It is a very large undertaking.
Mm-hmm.
What body instituted the Internal Control Act?
Public Authorities Law, Section 2930 through 32, lays out the board's responsibilities as it relates to internal controls. And that's why we present this summary to you each year so that you know that the requirements are being met. Now, one of the things that it does require are guidelines. The board has issued guidelines, but those guidelines were issued in 1990. It establishes an internal control committee. We have a committee that meets, as you can see from this report, on a biannual basis. One of the recommendations that the committee has put forward is a review of those guidelines sometime this year to update them and refresh them, and we would be more than happy to present some recommendations to this committee.
Good. Any questions? Make a motion to accept his report as he submitted. Don't need a vote? Okay, don't need a vote.
Don't need a vote.
Okay. Agency report on open audit recommendations, which we just talked about.
Right. Again, this committee has asked that myself and the internal control officers, working with audit services, monitor the implementation of audit recommendations, and to report to this committee any recommendation which has exceeded 6 months of its implementation. The report that you have in front of you now are those recommendations which have exceeded 6 months of their implementation date. We have representatives from each of the agencies here in terms of their internal control staff, as well as, I believe, representatives from several of the departments which are discussed within this report to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, any questions? I reviewed the...
Why isn't it done, or is there a reason that it can't be done?
Well, that's why we're here. Obviously, there were discussions prior to us coming here. I will tell you that obviously many recommendations were closed before we came here. We had discussions with the agencies and the departments involved. We told them that they were approaching 6 months. We told them that they exceeded 6 months in some instances, and that they were going to be brought to this committee. Excuse me. So in terms of what needs to be done, they are here to answer the question about why they haven't been implemented, what the plan is in terms of implementing them. So if there's a particular recommendation you have a question about, we have a representative here to explain what's going on.
If we start asking them question by question, issue by issue, it seems to me that that isn't going to be as helpful, and it will also take a fair amount of time. I think those that have not been implemented in 6 months, the agency involved ought to have some form of written report beyond the agency comment thing that says, I'm going to do it, I'm not going to do it, and here's why. And I think the burden should fall on them to tell you, and then ultimately the audit committee, where they are. The alternatives, as I see it, are twofold. One by one, we'll have a visit with each of them today or whenever. Or number two, at the end of that time of the next meeting, all hell's going to break loose.
Right. As you'll see in the report, I mean, not all, but many of the recommendations do include what they're calling a revised implementation date, which is the date the departments believe that they will, in fact, come into compliance and have implemented the recommendation. In terms of a very detailed discussion about each recommendation and what's involved, no, that's not included. But
Well,
we can do that if you would like.
If you take a look at, just to make the point as to how this can go on forever, look at the third item and look at the agency commentary, which says we've been doing stuff like this since 1988, but this is all we can do, apparently. The procedure will be updated once system-related recommendations are put into effect. The revised implementation date is 12/31/11. Are they saying we're going to do it?
Yes, by 12/31/2011, yes.
All right, so then what we ought to do is mark this tentatively closed as of December 31. But it seems to me we ought to be able to go down these and take those where they've said to you in words or in substance, I ain't going to do it, and just focus on those.
Well, unfortunately, I guess part of parcel of being a chief compliance officer, it isn't done until it's done. So they may say 12/31/2011, it doesn't come off until it's done.
That's really how we got to this report, because there are so many recommendations that come from so many different sources.
Correct.
We want to, how do we know that they're following these recommendations? So we instituted this, I guess, 3-4 years ago.
Right.
To come back and report on these every year to find out where they are. Okay?
All right, take a look at the
So
very
we're down to
last
10.
one. The very last one. Modification of the CBS outdoor monthly settlement is underway. Draft templates will be circulated for comment and acceptance. I only have a 6-year term. I mean, we need to get dates, like the 12/31, or have some way of affecting closure.
Well, this says they say they're going to implement this by the 30th of September.
Right.
On that one?
Yes, if you look
Oh,
behind,
I
if you
see.
look
Yeah,
behind
no,
the summary
right.
sheet, there's
Okay.
a detailed sheet behind it.
So all of them, they've got implementation dates of 11. So we go back and check them again. I think we're down to 10 that are open. So
Right. But if you look from where we were to where we are right now, I think we've made a massive improvement.
Are you comfortable we have no hot potatoes that are going to come and bite us?
No.
Open recommendations?
Hot
Yes.
potatoes?
Yes.
In terms of the open recommendations?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? We have to pass this.
No. Just for
That's
information.
also. Okay, now we got Internal Audit Service, their update, their mid-year report. And before Mike starts, I'd like to say that we had particular use at Metro North with our audit committee, internal audit committee, who did a lot of research. We were trying to go out for a change order on a purchase of Kawasaki cars. And Metro North called in our internal audit people, and they developed and worked at, and we came up with a range on which they thought was a fair price for the audit, for the purchase of the additional 25 cars. So that gave us an area to negotiate in, and that's what we did. And that just gives you an idea of some of the things they do. They get hired by the agencies to do this work for them.
Thank you,
Although
Jim.
you know, Jim, that the ultimate price for the single car is more than the married car, which has all the equipment.
I guess they just weren't going to make any more cars and lose money.
Right. We noted that, too. Thank you, Jim. So in the audit committee package, you will find updates to audit plan as of June 30th, and includes the executive summary of audits completed in the first half of 2011. The information in these reports have been provided to the agency presidents, the MTA managing director, the chief operating officer, and the chairman. In this presentation, I will re-emphasize our 2011 goals, review the overall audit plan status as of mid-year, share the results of our management surveys, review our plans for the second half of 2011, and answer any questions the committee may have. We have aligned our audit and management support services with the MTA's business strategy in order to achieve the objectives listed. Our support includes focusing our audit work on internal controls, work processes, and cost reductions. Such audits included our review of business processes at the Business Service Center this year, the capital procurement workflow, and the bus purchases and rail car procurements that Jim just referenced. Our work to support agency goals and initiatives includes a CPM organizational review we're conducting now to review costs there, and a B&T Kronos timekeeping implementation that was requested by the president of that agency. And finally, the most important aspect for an audit, as discussed here, is the implementation of the audit recommendations, and we have and will perform follow-up reviews to ensure that these implementations are implemented. This is a summary allocation of our resources to be provided to the agencies. This is consistent with the resource allocations presented to you in January of this year when the committee approved our 2011 audit plan. Again, one of the challenges of our department is to provide audit coverage for MTA headquarters and the agencies on a consistent basis while considering the overall risk to the MTA. One of the highest coverage areas this year was the rollout of the Business Service Center in January, and we have been actively involved there. This is a summary allocation of our actual resources by functional areas and is also consistent with the plan approved in January. These are samples of the type of audits that was discussed in January that we will be performing under each category. All of our audits will emphasize cost savings, risk mitigation, and the internal control environment. We had a productive first...
Could you just go
Sure.
back one slide?
Sure.
Under revenue, the smart card program hasn't even really rolled out until really the end of this year. I mean,
Well,
is that for next year?
Well, when you roll out major programs, auditing involvement is always done beforehand. So we work as a business partner there, talking about internal controls and processes, and give them an input before, rather than wait till it's implemented, then look at it, and it'd be very costly to make changes. So we're always involved when the project is just born until it is actually rolled out, and then thereafter we're involved as well. We had a productive first half of 2011. In summary, we completed 66 projects and 65 contract audits with over 300 recommendations. At this point, we are on target to complete our audit plan, and we will keep the committee apprised of any changes. We had very good results on identifying cost savings, $17.2 million on the operating side, and $25.4 million on the capital side. We have provided these results to management and are taking corrective action. I will highlight some of the key accomplishments in the next few slides. Our major accomplishments this half related to high-risk areas. Our work in these areas consisted of the Business Service Center. We assisted the agencies with the acclimation to the new PeopleSoft environment. We also performed audits of payroll and accounts payable to ensure data was properly processed and highlighted internal control enhancements. For procurement, we worked with the New York City Transit personnel to address issues and to ensure that the system could be used. For the New York City Transit capital procurement area, this project involves documenting the workflow as compares to the new PeopleSoft system, and to ensure that it can be used for third-party contracts, including consultants, construction contracts, and and issuance of purchase orders. For the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, we continue to review projects funded by this act to ensure that they have been awarded in compliance with internal policies, as well as FTA guidelines. The federal guidelines mandate that we audit such contracts. For New York City Transit bus purchases, we conducted a review of proposals submitted by the bus company to supply 328 and 90 buses respectively, totaling $316 million, and we ensured that the prices were fair and reasonable.
Mr. Fusilli, before you go to the next item, I'd
Sure.
like to leave the room.
Sure.
I represent the company involved.
Okay.
So I have a comment.
Okay, I'm off that slide now. That's okay, I'm done with that.
The next item,
Oh, the performance agreements.
the HIP billing.
Oh, the HIP billing, I'm sorry. For the HIP billings, we conducted a review of New York City Transit health care plan payments to ensure whether premium rates were appropriately paid to HIP. Based on our review, we found potential overpayments regarding duplicate payments and demographic differences, which we are following up with HIP for collection. You can call them back.
much does that involve? Oh. How much does that involve?
I'm back.
You got a question? Mike,
You left it.
you got
Go ahead.
the, say it. Say it.
$2.3 million.
Okay.
Now we're really paying.
Apologies.
No, thank you, sir. Annually, we sign up to performance agreements with each agency president. These agreements include our commitment to provide quality audit services to their respective agencies. Part of our agreement is to perform a survey of our performance and provide feedback and the results to the audit committee. We sent out 68 surveys earlier this year to each agency head and their senior management where we've had involvement. We received a response rate of 82%. The result of our survey is reviewed, summarized, and analyzed for trends, followed up where appropriate with the respondents. We request comments in 4 areas. Scoring is on a scale of 1 to 5. We look for 3 as an indicator of good performance. We once again receive overall positive results. To achieve quality results, it takes a professional staff. I'm pleased to inform the committee that we have a staff with a high degree of education, competency, and certification. This is evidenced by over 40% of our people are certified, either with a certified public accountant or a certified internal auditor, certified information system auditor, systems auditor. How does the second half of 2011 look? I want to restate to the committee that our primary role is an independent function that appraises risk and internal controls in the organization. In the second half, here are some of our key audits where we perform reviews for the remaining of the year. And these, again, as I talked about, the capital program organizational review, seeing how administrative costs, how much the administrative costs are in comparison to the program, and where we could achieve efficiencies. We're looking at a capital procurement workflow at New York City Transit with the implementation of the new system. As I talked about, a timekeeping system at the bridges and tunnels that will be used when they roll out their payroll in 2012 with the Business Service Center. As you recall, last year, the signal maintenance review that was performed with the Inspector General, the President of New York City Transit requested that we perform follow-up reviews to ensure we're complying with those recommendations. Again, we will look at medical costs. And as Jim referred, we just completed our review of the Metro-North single car procurement, which I'll send out the results to management next week. So we also coordinate our activities with agency management, the Inspector General, our independent public accountants, and the City and State Controller's Office. And with that, that concludes my presentation. If anyone has questions, I'd be glad to take them.
Any questions for Mike? Mike, all I can tell you is you're doing a heck of a job. Appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to thank the committee.
Our next meeting is September 26th. That agenda will include a presentation of the independent accounts review for the second quarter of 2011, the reappointment of our external auditors, and the annual audit committee report. There's no reason for an executive session. Need a motion to adjourn. Second? All in favor? Carried.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim. See you in September. Next time we come out.
Yeah.
Wait till Mr. Roth. Thank you.